Hey, welcome to Broadway Radical. I think it's about time we talk about Hamilton. Hamilton, the hip-hop musical that has swept the nation. It's made even non-theater people be interested in theater all of a sudden. It's reclaimed the traditional American narrative of the beginning of the country for the people of today's America. Written, composed, lyricized, performed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, time-traveling Cthulhu monster, robot overlord. Check out my video on how to fight him. This has been a big deal. It spurred a lot of the discourse on it, and perhaps started a trend of critical engagement, which I have seen, depending on the circumstances, either flourish or be completely overlooked. So I'm going to do the thing I do, where I analyze musicals. But first, summary. So we're in the Caribbean, right? Well, Alexander Hamilton sure is, and boy is he having a rough time. But then he's like, nah, I'm gonna make something of myself and go to New York. So then he does that, somehow. Also, it's 1776. Then he meets this guy Burr and these other dudes, and they're like, hey, revolution, am I right? So then they do that. And then Hamilton gets married to this chick Eliza, who's rich, and also her sister has a thing for him, and he kind of has a thing for her, and that would totally be a thing if, he wasn't getting married to her sister. So then the Revolutionary War happens. George Washington is like, hey, Hamilton, you're okay. Be my right-hand man. And Hamilton's like, sick. And Burr's like, dang it, Hamilton, I wanted to be that. And they're like, how are we going to win this war that we're in currently? And then collectively, they're kind of like, oh, like this. And then they win that war they're in. Then Burr and Hamilton go back and become lawyers. And also Hamilton becomes Secretary of Treasury because Washington is the president now. Later, so Thomas Jefferson rolls up to Congress and he's like, who has two thumbs and is now Secretary of State? This guy. And then he has several rap battles with Hamilton, who's trying to create a national bank and failing gloriously. And also then Hamilton cheats on his wife. Then he gets his bank thing through Congress by giving Jefferson and James Madison the capital. And Burr's like, dang it, Hamilton. I wanted to be in the room where it happened. Then John Adams becomes president. Hamilton gets fired. Jefferson, Burr, and Madison are like, I don't care for this foe. Let's let him know. We know he cheated on his wife and used federal money to cover it up. And he's like, you think you got me? I just cheated on my wife. I didn't even use federal money. And then they're like, oh, okay then. And then Hamilton's like, hey, it'd be a great idea. Let's tell everyone that I cheated on my wife. They'll respect me. It'll be great. And that does not happen. And everyone's super pissed at him. Most of all, his wife, whom he cheated on. Later, his son has grown up, and he's like, hey, I'm going to duel this dude, and then he dies. And then the presidential election comes, and it's between Burr and Jefferson, and it's up to Hamilton, and he's like, we'll go with Jefferson. And Burr's like, dang it, Hamilton, I wanted to be president. So then he's like, hey, so do you want to duel? And everyone's like, yes, definitely. We're going to go to the same place where my son died doing the same thing, and I'm going to do the same thing he did, and it's going to be great. And then he dies. And then everybody's all sad about it. And that's the end. And it's scene. That was the Broadway. Here's the Radical. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about with Hamilton. So like always, I'm just going to have to pick one or two things and roll with him. Let's go with first act, the war. Let's talk about violence. Let's talk about the state's monopoly on the legitimate use of force. So early in Act 1, there's a scene where a British loyalist is condemning the revolutionaries for their tactics and claiming they don't have the people's best interest at heart, unlike the monarchy, which of course totally does. Basically, Hamilton shoots him down easily. It's very clear that the people are not being heard, they have no representation, they have no way to communicate with the powers that be except the one language they understand: action. The musical sort of takes the dilemma of revolution versus reform for granted in the favor of revolution, which is good because reformism is a bougie mindset. But the revolutionaries are at a huge disadvantage. They are up against OG imperialism, and they know a thing or two about taking over and controlling a country and also ruining it. So, the revolutionaries steal their cannons. They sabotage the means that the empire uses to control them. And they don't have everyone on their side. In fact, they're facing major opposition even within their own ranks. Their opponents come from a place of comfort. Either they're not threatened by the monarchy, or they're just too caught up in their personal lives to particularly care about freedom or independence, whatever those terms really mean. There were some that believed they should plead with the monarchy for more rights, but the monarchy had absolutely no reason to give it to them. It was a sprawling empire colonizing like half the globe in its heyday. What possible incentive would they have to listen to one minority group? And we know that they didn't. And we know what had to be done to make them. We never once fault Hamilton and his friends for the actions they pursue. It's just the way things are. Direct action is the way to create change. Trying to plead with the king for this small reform or that frames the king as rightful ruler and thus the people as subjects. This robs the people of any and all autonomy, robs them of any control over their own lives. It reduces them to beggars. That's why they had to take matters into their own hands. But we know they were on the right side of history because we can see history now as it's passed. The lines become simple and clear, but it's not so easy to see when the history is being written around you every day. It's hard to be able to take a wider look at the course of history and where you fit in and whether you're going to be on the right side of it. Take everything I've said here just now and apply it to today's America. Apply it to the civil rights movements happening today, Black Lives Matter, or even apply it to the movements for a higher minimum wage, for paid maternity leave, for mandatory vacation time, things that Europe has had for a while and doesn't even question. Apply it to class struggle. All of the things that could be said of Hamilton's America can be said of ours, except instead of a monarchy profiting off exploitation of a small group of people, we're dealing with the America the founding fathers created, one built from the very start off the enslavement of other races, off the exploitation of women and the poor. Since the country and system were created by wealthy, white, landowning men, why would it serve anyone else? A system cannot fail those it was never designed to protect, and those stifled and oppressed groups have to, as Hamilton says, rise up. That is the story of Hamilton. That is why it matters in contemporary America, because the story of America then is the story of America now. But hey, that's just a theory, a musical theory. Thanks for watching.